Okay, welcome everyone. As we welcome in Irving Fishbaum, Saba, Mel Zachter, Barish Gesserman, Shimon Klein. We welcome in Marshall Castle, Moshe Lehman, Ilya Shutman, Yitzi Muller. We welcome in now Mark Frankel joining us. Welcome, Mark. And who do we got over there? That's Nachman Chapler who's joining us. Chaim, the Kirsch family is joining us. And we welcome in David Helfgott. So the shir is being sponsored by Baruch Ian, Lila Nishmas Esther Bas Yoni, Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba, Avram Ben Shmuel HaKayin. And also today, Baruch's son-in-law, tomorrow, is having a kidney transplant. So we'll learn for him Baruch Shlomo Ben Lina. That's very, very urgent. Baruch Shlomo Ben Lina. And also, Baruch Ian is really down with terrible sciatica. So we'll learn for Baruch also, Baruch Avram Ben Esther. We are sponsored by Aaron Swade for his Chana Bas Shmuel and for his sister Freda Bas Shaul. The Neshama should have an aliyah by Shimon Deer for the Refuah Shalema of all the Cholei Hadaf and Kol Cholei Yisrael. By Mark Frankel, Refuah Shalema for Miriam Sarah Bat Zipporah, by Be'er Goldwasser, as a thank you to Hashem for the kindness to his family and for Refuah Shalema for Kol Cholei Yisrael. Ilya Shutman asked us to learn for two uncles, Hanina ben Avram and Shlomo ben Yosef. Neshama should have an aliyah. And tonight is the yahrzeit of one of our Chavrei Hadaf, who used to join us once in a while, who was with us in Staten Island, a very, very, very refined and nice gentleman, Dr. Eisenberg's father, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg's grandfather, and one of the oldest living, one of the Jews that were in Staten Island before the Staten Island community really started. So we'll learn Lila Nishmas for Dr. Eisenberg Sr. Moshe Ben Yosef. His neshama should have an aliyah and he should have a lichtige Gan Eden. We learn from my Shver Avigdor Aryeh Ben Rivka. Never underestimate the power of so many of us dedicating our time to learning. We could really, really help people with our learning. We start a very unusual, the Gemara starts off with stuff that's highly novel and unusual. Highly novel and unusual as we start on the bottom line of Daf Vavam Beis, the bottom line of Daf Vavam Beis. Sandy Grunfeld has just joined us. Welcome. As has Eddie Chazan, who is not in a car. Is that really Eddie Chazan? We don't know. It might be an imposter, but he's moving around the camera just that we should feel that he's moving around. But anyway, Marshall, you're always driving. People crazy.
Stop laughing, Frankel. Ain't that funny?
That was a good one.
But anyway, so anyway, this is very unusual. Amarava, Tain Mana Leploini. What happens over here is Sarah, who wants to get married to Chatzkel, tells Chatzkel, Tain Mana Leploini, give $100 to Marshall, and then Vakadesh Lach, and I'll be Mekadeshes to you. And then, of course, when Chatzkel gives the money to Marshall, he says to Sarah, I should be Mekadeshes, you should be Mekadeshes to me, because he has to say the formula, Hariyat Mekadeshesly, with this money that I'm giving to Marshall, Mekudeshes, even though he didn't give Sarah any money, he gave it to Marshall, she's Mekudeshes Midin Arav, because it works with the same mechanics as a guarantor. Because think about it. If Mark gives a loan to Marshall, and Shelley guarantees it. Shelley is mishabed himself to Mark, even though Mark gave him no money. So, as the Gemara says, Arav, laf al gav deloy mati hano liyodei, even though Shelley didn't get anything from Mark, Shelley didn't get anything from Mark, yet, kamishabed nafshe, Shelley is being mishabed himself to Mark. Hayat Tsanami, this woman also, even though she didn't get anything from Chatzkel, Chatzkel gave the money to Marshall, even if she didn't get anything from Chatzkel, she still gives herself over to Chatzkel because he gave the money to Marshall. Now, as we welcome in Baruch Ian, and Baruch, everybody did have in mind your Adam Baruch Shlomo ben Lina. He should have a successful surgery tomorrow and a successful transplant.
Thank you. Amen.
Now that's the first case. As we welcome in Richard Rosenzweig, that's the first case, but the plot thickens. Boy, is it going to thicken. The next case is Heilech Mana Viskachi Leploini. What happens now is Mark gives money to Sarah. Heilech Mana. Mark gives money to Sarah and says, with this money, Viskachi Leploini, you should be Mekudeshes to Chatzkel. The Chatzkel made him a shliach, but it's not Chatzkel's money. Mark gives money to Sarah, and he says, take this mana and be Mekudeshes to Chatzkel, Mekudeshes, even though Chatzkel didn't give any money. Mark gave the money, and yet Sarah is Mekudeshes to Chatzkel. Why? Medin Evet Kanani. Because this is the way it works by an Evet Kanani. Somebody could pay money for the Evet Kanani to free him, and Tony, the Evet Kanani, goes free, even though he didn't give any money. Evet Kanani, lav afal gav deloy chaser veloy midei. Evet Kanani, that somebody else gave money for him to free him. The Evet Kanani goes free. Lav afal gav deloy chaser veloy midei. He didn't give anything. Yet kakani nafshe. So high gavra nami. So also Chatzkel. In this case. So also Chatzkel, Afal Gav, the low Chasav Eloi Midei, he didn't give anything. Mark gave the money. Yet Kakani Leila Yitzah, he acquires this woman. And now the Gemara, this is really ultimate Talmudic logic. The Gemara is going to fuse the Svara of Arav and the Svara of Evet Kanani and create a case where we use both these mechanics. Having a lot of late arrivals tonight. Rabbi said we're starting this week at 8:15. And Bruce, we did learn for your wonderful father, Moshe ben Yosef, his neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden. You should be a Melitz Yosher on your entire wonderful, beautiful family.
Thank you.
And as I was telling people, a more refined, nice gentleman is hard to find on this planet. He was really a credit to the Tzelem Elikim. We want to welcome in all the late arrivals, Rabbi Kranz, Reuven Palak, Michael, Yisrael Fisher, Gedalia Engel, Moshe Lehman, and it's a hard piece to walk in the middle of. You know, it hurts me to start when people have not arrived, but if I'm going to wait, then the people that come on time will be sitting here and twiddling their thumbs, and, you know, people get bored of their thumbs. For those that have just come in, we are holding by Kain Mana Leplini, which is 9 lines from the top of Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. 9 lines from the top of Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. Now we're going to fuse and synthesize the svara of Orev and the svara of Eved Kanani in this next case. Here, Sarah says, Tain Mana Leploini. Sarah tells Mark, give $100 to Chatzkel, v'akadesh ani loy, and I'll be mekudeshes to him. This is wild. She says, give $100 to Chatzkel. She tells Mark, give $100 to Marshall, to Chatzkel, and I'll be Mikudeshes to him. And of course, Chatzkel, when he accepts the money, he says, with this money, Sarah should be Mikudeshes to me, because he has to say that formula. Mikudeshes, she's Mikudeshes midin shneya. Now, the first problem over here is that she didn't get anything, right? She said to Mark, give $100 to Chatzkel, and I'll be Mekudeshes. So she didn't get anything. So first of all, the Gemara says it's okay she didn't get anything. Because Arav, remember we said when Shelley guaranteed the loan that Mark gave to Marshall, Arav lafal gav deloy mati hanol yadei, even though Shelley didn't get any benefit, come mishabed nafshe. He's mishabed himself to pay to Mark the loan if Marshall defaults. So Hayitzanami Sarah also afal gav deloy mati hanol yadei, even though no benefit came to her liyada. Yet kamakni nafsha, she still gives herself over to Chatzkel. But the Gemara says, wait, me dummy, what's the comparison? Arav, in the case of Arav, Hodika Kanile, Mark, who Shelley has to pay money to, Kachasim Emaina, he at least gave money away to Marshall. But Gavra Kakanila Lahayitzasa, but Chatzkel is getting this woman without giving any money. He didn't give any money. To the contrary, Mark gave him money, right? She told Mark to give him money. But he didn't give any money. So the Gemara says, well, it's the same thing as Eved Kanani. Eved Kanani yoichia. If somebody else pays to free him, he didn't give away any money, and yet v'kakani nafshe, yet he acquires his freedom. So here too, even though Chatzkel didn't give any money, he acquires the woman. Says the Gemara, me dummy, but what's the comparison? Hasam hachtekam makne, the one that's giving it over. In other words, the owner of the slave, who's giving the slave over, kakani, is getting something. He's getting money from someone. Hacha, but over here, the woman who's giving herself over is not getting any money. She told Mark to give the money to Chatzkel. Hayitza kamakni nafshi, she's giving herself over. V'loy kakanya v'loy midei, she's not getting anything. Says the Gemara, That's again, hi, Itzsa, this woman is giving herself over and she's not getting anything. To the contrary, she said that Mark should give Chatzkel the Chassan money. So Arv Yachiach. So again, Arv will disprove it. But Shelley is Meshaben himself to pay Mark for the loan if Marshall defaults, even though Shelley isn't getting anything. So now, the Gemara declares another shayla. Boy Rava, Heilech Mana, she says, Sarah says to Chatzkel, take this $100, va'akadesh ani lach, and I should be mekudeshes to you. Now, and then he says, of course, with my taking this money, you should be mekudeshes to me. What's the din? She's mekudeshes. Now that sounds extremely strange. Let's study that case. She says to the chassan, take this $100 and I should be mekudeshes to you. And then, of course, in order to preserve the ki yikach ish isha, he says, with my accepting this $100, you should be mekudeshes to me. So the Gemara says mekudeshes. Now, how does that work? Now, what it sounds like is that he's kind of the isha agav the money. He's kind of the money, and agav the money, he's kind of the isha. Now, we know that there's such a thing by kinyan agav, that if I want to sell to Gedalia 100 bowling balls, and he doesn't feel like doing meshicha on 100 bowling balls, I could sell him or rent him a piece of land, and once he acquires the land, agav the kinyan of the land, he acquires the money. So agav, you acquire nechasim she'ein lehem achrayis, that's metaltalin. Agav nechasim she'yesh lehem achrayis. That's one of the kinyanim that we make with the guy, with the chametz. I rent to him a room in the house, let's say the boiler room, and agav the boiler room, he gets all the chametz. Right? But the Gemara says here we're doing it in the reverse. We're saying that agav the money that the chassan is getting, that's nechasim she'ein lehem achrayis, he gets nechasim she'yesh lehem achrayis, because since avodim are hukish l'karkayis, humans are like real estate. So Amalei Ravashi Marzutra Im Kain Havele Nechasim Sheyesh Lehem Achrayis, that's the woman who's similar to Karka, Niknim Im Nechasim Sheyesh Lehem Achrayis, is acquired when he gets the money. But Vanan Ibchetanan, we learn the opposite, that Nechasim Sheyesh Lehem Achrayis, the bowling balls, are acquired Niknim Im Nechasim Sheyesh Lehem Achrayis. If Gedalia makes a kinyan on a piece of real estate with either kesef, shtar, and kazaka, he gets the 100 bowling balls. But we don't say it the other way. So the Gemara says, no, that's not how this works. That's not the mechanics over here. Amalei mi savrit to amrlei agav. It's not a kinyan of agav, that when the chassan takes the money, he acquires the woman agav the money. No. That's what's going on over here. Hacha ba'adam chashiv askina. This is talking about where the chassan is a gadol. And she says, with the hana that I have, that you're accepting the money from me, because you know, when you give to a great man something, it's as if you're makrib bikurim. So she says, the benefit that I get, that you're accepting a gift from me, Gomra maknele nafsha. I have in mind that I give myself over. Now, Itmar Nami Mishmei de Rava, the Gemara says now that the three rules that we said above, that works, Medin Kinyan Arav, Bedin Eved Kanani, and a fusion of the Din Arav and Din Eved Kanani, V'chein le'inyan mamayna, doesn't only work to acquire a woman, but it also works in sales. Now we're going to take a look at Rashi for a review of the three places as it pertains to sales. I made a bracha already. We welcome in Rich Leonard, who's joining us. It's hard to come in the middle of this Gemara. Very hard. Olam has to try to come at the start when we have a Gemara like tonight. So v'chein le'inyan mamayna, look at Rashi. Hanach shmaitza deravad yalfinan kiddushin, that we apply to the marriage of a woman midin orav and midin evet kanani, and from a fusion of the two. Kain le'inyan mamayna. This also works by sales. And now Rashi says, what are the cases? Machalei sada. What happens is Mark sells to Marshall a field. V'amalai, and he tells him, acquire the field. Teina kesef leplaini. Mark tells Marshall, give the money to Barachian. V'sadai mechurulach, and my field is sold to you. So the Gemara says, Kana midin arav. So Marshall acquires the field from the din of arav, because just like an arav, Shelley is mishabed himself even though he didn't get anything. So here too, Mark is mishabed himself to Marshall even though he didn't get anything, even though Marshall gave the money to Barachian. Heilech mana. Then the next case is, Mark says, here's $100. Utei sadcha mechura leplain, and the field should be acquired to Rich. Now Rich didn't give any money for it. Mark gives money to Marshall, and he says that the field should go to Rich. Kana oisei plaini asada. Rich gets ownership of the field. Midin evet. Because just like an Evet Kanani, he acquires himself if somebody pays to free him, even though no money came from the Evet Kanani. So also, Rich could get the field, even though he didn't pay any money to Marshall. Tain mana leplaini. This is the wildest case. Tain mana leplaini. He tells here, Mark tells Abi, give $100 to Marshall, v'tikna lo yisadai, and Marshall should acquire the field. Get a load of this. This is a great day for Marshall. Mark says to Abi, Tain mana leplaini, give $100 to Marshall, v'tikna lo yisadai, and he should acquire my field. So this works kind of medin shneim. This works when we synthesize the din of Orav and the din of Evet Kanani. Now Marshall acquires it, even though he didn't give anything, just like the Evet Kanani acquires his freedom if somebody else pays to free him, even though he didn't give anything. Now in this case, Marshall is getting the field, and Mark is mishabed himself to give him the field, even though Mark didn't get anything, just like Shelley as an Orav is mishaving himself to pay for the loan, even though he didn't get anything. So we say these three rules by monetary sales. Now, so the Gemara says, why do we have to say the din both by Kiddushin and by monetary sales? B'tzricha. Diyash meaning Kiddushin, because if we would say that these far-fetched kinyan work by Kiddushin, you know why? Because it doesn't take much to acquire a woman. She's happy to give herself over even in the most far-fetched kinyan. Why? Because anyway, she doesn't want to be alone. She's happy to give herself over for the most far-fetched kinyan. She would rather live two bodies, especially on a cold night, than to live alone. But when it comes to a real purchase, a sale, maybe these far-fetched kinyanim is not enough. Because you see, by money, anyway, you could be meichel the need and waive your rights to something. But a woman can't waive her rights to be married to someone. Mishum desyav lemechila, by a sale you could waive your rights. Al Kiddushin by Kiddushin you might need to have a stronger kinyan. Tzricha, so we have to say that this works both by Kiddushin and by sales. And now we'll mention also that Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, who alerted to me the first, now we have the son and the grandson here with us this evening on the Zayda and father's yahrzeit, Moshe ben Yosef. His neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden, and they should continue this wonderful father and son and grandson should continue sending the Zayda and the Tata packages with their learning. Okay. I am delighted to tell you that the hard portion of tonight's daf is over. That was a very difficult piece of Gemara. Very difficult piece of Gemara. Now the Gemara says, Amar Rava hiskachi li lechetzi. If a man says to a woman, you should be mekudeshes to half of me. Mekudeshes. As the Gemara is going to explain, what he meant to say is I'm reserving the right to marry another wife. So you're only going to get half of my attention. However, chetzyeich mekudeshesli, half of you should be mekudeshes to me, ain't a mekudeshes. Because a woman can't marry another man. So when he says half, he must have meant literally, I'm only being mekadesh half of you. And you can't be mekadesh a half of a woman. You have to be mekadesh the whole woman. So Amalei Abaye l'Rava, so I gave you the scoop, the maskana of the Gemara, but Abaye wonders to Rava, Maishna chetzyeich mekudeshes li, where he says half of you should be mekudeshes to me, the ain't a mekudeshes. Why? Because you can't do half. Isha merachman, ki yikach ish isha, v'lei chatzi isha, and not half of a woman. So Achanami, when he says you should be mekudeshes to half of me, why does that work? Isha merachman, it says ki yikach ish, v'lei chatzi ish. So the Gemara says, no. Amalei hachi hashta. What's the comparison? Hasim, when he says half a woman, he can't mean that she could marry somebody else, because it's a lebeit trei loy chazia. She can't marry two people. So when he says half, he meant literally half of her. That's no good. Elagavra, but a man could marry two wives. Miloi chazi lebeit trei. When he said that she should be Kodeshes to half of him, he didn't mean it literally. He just meant that he's reserving the right to marry somebody else. If I want to marry someone else, nasivna, I can. But 1 second, where he says I should be Kadeshes to half the woman, we said it's no good, but why? Once he said to half the woman, the Kiddushin should spread through her, because Hekdesh is nispashit. Hekdesh spreads, like we'll see in a minute by a carbon. And therefore the Kiddushin should spread through her, and she should be Mekadeshes. So Amalei Ma'azut Reid Ramoda Avina V'Nifshatula Kiddushay B'Kula. The Kiddushin should spread through all of her. Milay Tanya Ha'ima Ragla Shalzu Ayla. If he says the foot of this animal should be a burnt offering, take Kula Ayla. We say that the Kiddushin spreads and the whole animal is an Ayla. Va'afilu Man Yama ain't Kula Ayla, and even according to Man Yama that the whole animal is not an Ayla. Hani Milay Eichad Makdish Davashein An Neshama Tluyabai. That's only if he was makdish a leg. But if he was makdish the heart, aval makdish davish and neshama tluya by makdish the heart, and the animal can't exist without the heart, so then it spreads throughout the whole animal. Have you kula ola? So here when he says he should be kaddish the half of the woman, she can't exist without half of herself. We should say that the Kiddushin should spread through the whole woman and it should be good. So the Gemara says, by an animal it works. Because you're the owner of the animal. There's no koyach, there's no opposition koyach. But here where she agrees to half of her, she didn't agree to the rest of her. So it can't spread because she didn't agree to it. Mi dami, hasam behema. Here there's an animal who it's only up to the owner. Hachadas acheres. Here, there's an opposition opinion. The woman, she only agreed to half. It can't spread more than half. We'll see where there is an opposition, it doesn't spread. If an animal is owned by Berish and Mel, Hikdish Ketzia, if Berish sanctified his half, only his half could get sanctified because Mel is not maskim to anything else. So it can't spread where there's an opposition, and it can't spread where the other half is owned by Mel. Right? So Behemish El Shnei Shutvin, Hikdish Chetzia, if Berish was makdish the first half, and then Berish buys the other half from Mel, the Chazer Ulekacha Vikdisha, and he's makdish the second half. Kedusha, it's now completely Kaddish, but Ve'ena Kreva, it can't be offered up. Why? Because when he was makdish only half, at that moment it was rejected from the Mizbeach. Because you can't offer up a half an animal. And kevan shit nitcha. Once it's rejected, it's rejected. We don't say chayz v'nira. Now that he was makdish the second half, now the whole thing is kaddish, but ve'ena kreva, it can't be offered up, it's rejected. If he then says zeh tachazeh, he takes one animal, he makes a tmura with this animal. V'aisa tmura, it could affect the exchange, but the exchange, the exchange is like the principal. And usmurasa kayotza, but you can't offer the second one either. Now, from this, that when Berish is makdish half, it becomes rejected. Shmami not tlas. We could deduce three things. Very interesting deductions we're going to make. My wife really did me a chesed. I had some coughing. She made me a tea with honey. It really did the trick.
Put a little bourbon and it'll do a better trick.
With a little bourbon, the shir would have sounded a little different.
That would have been great.
Rabbi say by Marshall against your freilich.
Yeah, Marsh, the Waller would sing the shit in bourbon.
I would pay to hear that.
Now, so Shmamina Balechayim Nidach, that even if the animal is alive, it could be rejected. That's a controversial issue. Some people hold that live animals, just like they can't be Makabal Tumah, they can't be rejected. But here we say when Berish is Makdish half, even though it's alive, it's rejected. And Vishmamina Dichui Mei Kara Havi Dichui. rejection even before it's fit could be rejection, because here the animal was never fit, because he wasn't makdish the whole animal, so it was never fit. But we see that initial rejection is considered rejection. That is rejection even though it doesn't have a Kiddushin Daf. Something that you're makdish only half the animal doesn't have an intrinsic Kedusha because it's not fit for the Mizbeach. It only has a Kedusha that its value is Kaddish, and you have to sell it and buy another animal. And we see that even something that only has Kedushas Damim could be rejected. Now the Gemara says a whole bunch of questions of things that Marshall would do when he drinks bourbon. Okay, I'm sorry, Marshall. You might do it even when you're not drinking bourbon. But, yeah, but most people only if they drank a lot of bourbon. Now,
I gotta get on my Madrega, then they'll be okay.
right. It takes a lot of work to be on your Madrega. They would have to visit the Bowery for 40 days in a row. Now, so boy Rava, if let's say Chatzkel tells Sarah, Chetz yeich bechatzi pruta, I makdish half of you with half a pruta, v'chetz yeich bechatzi pruta, and the other half of you with half a pruta. What's the din? Mao, keven damala chatzi pruta paska. Once he said a half a pruta, that stops it. And it's two transactions, and you can't be makdish a half a woman. So it's no good. Even if you makdish first one half and then another half, you can't be makdish half a woman. So it's no good. It says ki yikach ish isha and not half a woman. Ay dilma mayna v'haylachu. He's just adding half a pruta and the other half with half a pruta. In other words, the whole one with a pruta. And then he really meant, he was just counting it out, and he really meant a whole woman with a pruta, and that's good. Now, imtim tzalema mayna v'haylachu, what if he says, chetz yeich bepruta, v'chetz yeich bepruta? Half of you for a pruta. Now, a pruta is already, could do the job on itself. He said, half of you for a pruta, and the other half of you for a pruta. Kevan damal of a pruta, since he said, amount that's enough. Kevan damal of a pruta upruta, paskala milsa. So he wanted to do two separate transactions, half for a pruta, and then another half for the pruta. You can't be mekadosh half of a woman, it's no good. Since it was on the same day, he meant it to be one transaction. He meant, I want her for two prutas. If it's the same day, he's just adding it up and it's one transaction, a woman for two prutas. What about if he says, Chetz yeich bepruta hayom, v'chetz yeich bepruta l'machar? Half of you for a pruta today, and half of you for a pruta tomorrow on Monday. Now, since he split it in 2 days, pascha. So he's doing half today and half tomorrow. That's no good. You can't be mekadosh half of a woman. Kiddushin miskelu. Now the process is starting from today. And it's completed. It doesn't complete itself ad l'macha. What about if you enumerate shnei chetz yeich bepruta mao? 2 halves for a pruta. Here he was saying, really, it's really the same thing. 2 halves is a whole. So here he definitely means that he's being mekadosh the woman at one time, and it's good. Once you say halves, it's no good. You can't say 2 halves. You have to say the whole. 2 halves, you can't acquire, because you can't acquire separately each half. So the Gemara says, take it. We got to leave this to Mashiach. Tishbi Yatai, it's Kushas Yibayis. Now, Rabbi declares another shaila, which You know, it's interesting how you look at it. What happens here is Chatzkel has 2 daughters. Rachel, who is 8, and Leah is 9. And Marshall tells Chatzkel, here's a pruta for your 2 daughters. Marshall is a real, generous guy. Here's a pruta for your 2 daughters. So that sounds like a half a pruta for each one, which is no good. Or do we say that it goes not basar the girls, but basar the father? And the father's getting money. He's getting a pruta. Look at this. Marsha, you couldn't give 2 prutas?
I overpaid, what can I do?
It was a slow day at the shop. By Rava. Now, Marsha wasn't taking it for himself. He was taking it for his 2 sons. So your 2 daughters for my 2 sons for a pruta. So, Boy Rava, shtei b'nosecha, your 2 daughters, l'shnei banai b'pruta mau. Basar noisin u'mekabel azlina. Do we go basar Marshall and Chatzkel, and there you have a pruta. V'yikem b'mayna. Oy bilma basar didu azlina, we go basar the kalas, the chassan and the kalas, and there each kala is given a half a pruta, and then it's no good. V'haleka. The Gemara doesn't resolve this. Take it. Now, the next case is really interesting. Boy Rava. Boy Rapapa. Bitcha uparascha bepruta. I want your daughter and your cow for the pruta. Holy cow. So he gives Chatzkel for the daughter and the cow a pruta. Now, if he meant a half a pruta for the daughter and a half a pruta for the cow, that's no good. But maybe he meant the pruta for the daughter and the cow, I'll be kind of with Mashiach. So amina bitcha b'chatzi pruta, your daughter for half a pruta, uparascha b'chatzi pruta, and the cow for half a pruta, and that's no good. Dilma bitcha b'pruta, parascha b'Mashiach. I'll take the cow with Mashiach, and then he's giving a pruta for the daughter. Take it. Same thing could be asked with real estate. By Ravashi, they all knew Marshall. By Ravashi, bidcha v'karkach b'pruta. I'm buying your daughter and the pool room for a pruta. So does that mean, Mao, bitcha b'chatzi pruta v'karkach b'chatzi pruta, and then that's no good, because only paying a half a pruta for the girl. I'm taking your daughter with a pruta, and the pool room I'm going to make a chazaka on. It could be kind of a piece of real estate with chazaka by making an improvement. V'karkoyach b'chazaka. Take tishbi ataretz kushas v'yibayis. Now here's the last case. Now you might remember that by a chuppah you might see the Masada Kiddushin ask the girl if she's willing to accept the ring with whatever it's worth. Because if she has an inflated idea that the ring is very expensive, and it's not, then that could be a Kiddushin in Tos. So now, this Gemara is a little bit along these lines. Hahu gavra da aktish b'shiroi. A man was makdish a girl with some silks. Rabba Amar loit tzriche shuma, it doesn't need to be evaluated. Rav Yosef Amar tzriche shuma, it needs to be evaluated. That means Rabba holds that it needs to be evaluated before the Kiddushin. Rav Yosef, Rabba says it doesn't need to be evaluated before the Kiddushin. And Rav Yosef says it needs to be evaluated. So now the Gemara elaborates. Ida amala bekoldahu. If he says to her, I want you to accept it no matter what it's worth, so then kuli amala pligi delay tzricha shuma, because she agrees whatever it's worth. It's obviously worth more than a pruta. So if she said, I accept it no matter what it's worth, it's good. Ida amala chamshin. If he said to her that it's worth 50 zuz, and then afterwards they evaluated it and it's not worth 50 zuz, v'lo yishaveh chamshin, then there's no machlokes, it's definitely no good. It wasn't 50 zuz. He didn't fulfill the Kiddushin. Halo yishaveh. Ki pligi. They argued to Amar Chamshin. He says, I'm in Mekadosh you with this silk, which is 50 zuz, v'shavu Chamshin, and it's worth 50 zuz. Rabbah says it's not enough. You have to evaluate it before. The other way around. Rabbah says you don't have to evaluate it. She takes his word, it's worth 50, they check it, it's worth 50, it's good. Rabba amalei tzricha shuma, dashav v'chamshin. So when we check it out later, we see it's 50, and he said it's 50, that's good. Rav Yosef says no, because she's not confident that it was worth 50, and therefore she didn't wholeheartedly give herself over, because she wasn't confident. Remember, when the man says Hariyat Mekudeshesli, she just accepts the item. She doesn't say yes. So we have to say, we assume that she's giving herself over. Rav Yosef says that if we didn't evaluate it beforehand, she's not confident and she doesn't give herself over. Rav Yosef amatzricha shuma. Why? Kaven de itzisaloi bekia b'shuma. She's not an expert at the value of silk. Loi samcha data. She was not assured. She was not confident. She was not reliant that it was 50. So she didn't give herself over. So you have to assess it beforehand that she should be confident. Otherwise, she's not Mekudeshes. Okay, we got our money's worth tonight, boy. Not an easy Gemara with 31 Zoomers as we welcome in Yehuda from Yerushalayim. We're going to learn the Mishnah Yomis now, which is very easy. Also, I want to remind everybody, let's try to come at 8:15 so we could start. Like I really had a dilemma tonight whether I should start. I did stall about 7 minutes, but you know, we want to try to that people should get the Hakdama and everything to understand the beginning of the Gemara. Okay, we are now going to learn the Mishnah Yomis.